So, I'm today with Aaron Hillegass from the Beginner's Launch. Hello Aaron, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
So, could you introduce yourself? You're from the Big Nerd Ranch, but what else?
Sure, my name is Aaron Hillegass. I'm the founder of Big Nerd Ranch, which is one of the leading services company. We do contract programming and training for iOS, the Mac, Android, HTML5, and even some Windows work as well. And I guess the reason why people know me at the conference is that I'm the author of the standard Objective-C book, which is Objective-C, the Big Nerd Ranch Guide, the standard iOS book, which is iOS Programming, the Big Nerd Ranch Guide, which you happen to be reading. Da, 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 da. And I've also written a book on Cocoa Program, which is Cocoa Programming for Mac OS X.
Do you write? I saw that the Big Nerd Ranch released an Android book. Do you write it, or it's one of your colleagues?
Which book?
Android programming, I think.
Yeah, Android programming. I did not write that. I was an editor on it, but Big Nerd Ranch does do a lot of Android work and a lot of Android training.
Okay, then could you talk us about what is exactly the Big Nerd Ranch? Because I personally know, but
yeah.
Maybe our editors, listeners doesn't know it.
Big Nerd Ranch is a company. Right now, we're about 100 employees. We have an office in Atlanta, which is our headquarters. We also have an office in Amsterdam. And we have an office in Birmingham, Alabama. We do classes in Amsterdam, Atlanta, and Monterey, California on iOS and Android programming. And we have contract programmers who write applications mainly for big companies. So our companies are some of the largest, our clients are some of the biggest companies in the world. Most recently, we've become known because we're the ones who taught the Facebook engineers how to do iOS and Android programming. So we've trained 600 of their engineers how to do mobile development.
Wow. What about your studies? I think you studied in IT, probably?
I actually did not study IT. I studied music. I played saxophone. And for the first couple of years, music was it. And then I studied mathematics. And while I was doing the mathematics, I did a little programming on the side. But when I dropped out of graduate school, I decided I could make a career out of programming. So I'm largely a self-taught programmer.
Okay, what's your background before teaching and programming iOS development?
So as I said, I was a self-trained programmer, but I started when I was 10. So it was 1979 on a Commodore PET with only 4K of memory. And you would save your programs out onto a tape recorder. And then I became a professional programmer when I graduated from high school. I took a job at the MITRE Corporation doing speech recognition research. So I had a very good math background. I'm sorry, that was actually, after high school. And then I ended up on Wall Street, and I did some work in financial services on the Next computer. And from learning the Next computer, I took a job at Next as well. And then I was there when the merger occurred. And I ended up working at Apple for a little while. And then when I left, I started my own company. Okay,
so I don't know that you work for Next. So maybe you could talk about. I'm pretty sure that you know Steve Jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell us about iPapi repositories?
Steve Jobs was a very gifted man. He had the ability to recognize the flaws in any product and make them obvious. And he was very good at creating a vision for a company and explaining that vision clearly. Steve Jobs could also be very, very impatient and very dismissive of people. And so he made a point of hiring people around him who were very confident in who they were and what they could do, because they were the only people who could put up being yelled at the way that he tended to yell at people. But it all came from that sense of impatience, that he had a vision of a product that he wanted, and he was always frustrated when that product took longer to come to market than he had hoped for.
Okay, what could you, because you were close to Steve Jobs, what could you do about the distortion reality,
the distortion reality field?
Yeah.
Yes, when Steve would speak, it was often easy for you to believe whatever he had to say. He was very compelling. He explained things, and he explained why they were important. And when you heard them, you were like, yes, this is important, and yes, we will do it. And it was only later, in the light of the next day, that you would think, what? Why is that important again? And is that really possible? And it's it's stronger the closer you are to him. If you're in a very small group and Steve is talking to you, it's very powerful, and as the group gets bigger and bigger, it weakens. So if you've ever experienced him at the keynote of something and found him compelling, I can assure you he can be even more compelling than that.
Yeah, in fact, he transform user to evangelist, evangelist to ambassador. It's awesome, in fact.
Yeah.
Well, we are here at WWDC. What could you tell about the new OS 6 that just released, Maverick? Do you like it? Have you tried it yourself?
OS 10 Maverick is a very interesting release in that there's not a whole lot of new features really, but under the covers they did a lot to make it more efficient, both in terms of battery life and also disk access. So for example, the compressed virtual memory is huge. So when the RAM of a computer gets filled up and you try and claim more, pages of memory get swapped out to disk. And so what they decided they would do is they would compress these pages in memory as they were unused, so they could keep more in RAM, and when they did have to be written out, they could be written out and brought back in much more quickly. So we're going to see significantly more performance, both in terms of speed and also in terms of battery life from all our computers, and this is a big step forward. You can also see that they're working hard to make it a little more consistent with the iOS approach. So there's now a Maps application, and there is unified notifications, and they're pushing more for full screen windows. So for example, the Finder now has tabs, so you can actually run the Finder as a full screen window effectively. So we're getting a user experience that's more and more like iOS. At least there's a consistency between them, while under the covers they're making great strides in making it more efficient.
Okay, what you just talking about integration of iOS, the iPhone and iPad's operating system. Listeners realize that there's big changement in UI, big changement in functionalities. What's your impression on this release on iOS 7?
I'm not a designer by any stretch of the imagination, but I think that this redesign was overdue. That the user community has really matured and they were ready for a deeper design language. For example, the dragging from the sides. A lot of the other operating systems already do that, like Windows 8. I think the semantic zoom, where when you pinch it doesn't just get smaller, but it actually changes the way it lays out the information to be more useful. Once again, Windows was already doing it. I think the font improvements and a little bit flatter design are steps in a direction that the whole mobile space is going, and Apple needed to be there.
Okay, well, what do you answer to people who say that iOS 7 user interface is like Windows Phone Metro or Android system?
So it's true, there's been a lot of criticism that the iOS 7 is a lot like Windows 8 and the Android system, and or at least that it took a lot from them. And I would say definitely, and it's a great thing, that they have taken the best ideas from Windows and Android and added it to iOS 7. I don't think that's anything to be embarrassed of. I think that the entire industry should be always pushing to do the very best, regardless of where the ideas come from. And all the ideas that I've seen that were stolen were very good.
Okay, you went to platform of State Union, I think.
To what? I'm sorry.
To platform of State. Just on the keynote afternoon, for the keynote for Développeur, in fact.
Right.
What do you think about the tools they provide to us about, especially about iOS not Xcode 5 and so developer tools?
In general, I can't actually comment on anything that was said there because it wasn't in the keynote.
Okay.
That is under NDA. But I can say that in general, Apple does a very good job giving free tools, which is astonishing, free tools to developers. And keeping those evolving with the needs of the community. And in particular, we're seeing a lot more support for large organizations dealing with creating applications in a more systematic way. So we start talking about unit testing, source code control, and continuous integration. There's going to be a lot more support for that in upcoming versions of Xcode.
Okay, about what do you want? Just imagine that you are an engineer from Apple. What will you personally add features for OS 6 or iOS?
The most important thing that they need on both platforms is to update the App Store to allow more flexible pricing. In particular, what the community would really like is free trials that time out. So you could download an app and you could try it for 7 days, and if you liked it, you would have to pay for it, and if you didn't like it, it would be automatically erased. I've also paid upgrades, so when I add new features, I can change the price, and if you decide you want the new features, you would pay for the upgrade. The community is stuck trying to sell applications at 99 cents because people can't do free trials, so they don't know if the app is what they want. And until we have that, we can't raise the prices and get paid appropriate amounts for the applications. That would be the number one.
About the SDK. Well, as a developer, what do you personally add to the SDK to make developer life more easy or something like this? Would like to add something to the SDK provided by Apple?
Let me think for a minute. Overall, the SDKs are pretty complete in my mind. The problem that we've had in the community lately is iCloud. iCloud has not been easy to integrate with. And in particular, we'd really like to see some sort of a fast sync protocol by which we could talk to iCloud. And I guess that's what I would love to see, is a more sophisticated API for developers to talk to iCloud. The nice part is that we can see that they're working on the infrastructure when we see things like the iCloud keychain. That's encryption and distribution and invalidating caches. And so we can see that the infrastructure is coming. We just need to make sure that eventually Apple will open it up to all developers to use.
You just talked about the new features Apple released in iOS Maverick called Keychain in the Cloud. Don't you think that it will kill some great apps like 1Password?
1Password is a good app, but it can be even better when it's integrated in with the operating system. And for such a crucial central piece for security of everyone, I think that Apple really stepped forward and did something good for the whole community. And of course, I fear for 1Password, but they do have a good position because they are cross-platform, and 1Password will allow you to have your passwords on the Mac and your Windows device and your Android device all stored in the cloud. So I think they still have a good, strong niche, and I'm glad that Apple went ahead and Sherlocked their product. I think it's going to be good for everyone who's using 1Password, a single password at multiple different websites. Because when one website gets hacked, then all the other accounts on the different other websites are in peril.
Well, personally, I've maybe 3 or 4 passwords I changed, but a lot of people, the real problem is security. People either use same password for multiple services, but take some password like their birthday, theirs. What do you think about this point of security in IT?
Oh, I think it's a terrible problem. And one of the nice things about the new password in the cloud is that it can generate random passwords for you, truly random passwords. And I think that's going to be a huge benefit because the passwords won't even be predictable.
Well, thank you for this interview, Aaron. Could you say a word in French for us?
I'd be happy to say a word for you in French.
So,
like, jour. No, you just specify the words. J'aime Supinfo.
Supinfo.
Supinfo. J'aime Mac4ever.
That's perfect.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Aaron. And see you later.